Arc 6, Chapter 1, The Dragon Carriage's Way Back. Natsuki Subaru's group continued to head directly east upon leaving the city of Pristella. They were heading towards the eastern edge of the world, the area in which the Auguria Sand Dunes were contained, a plot of land with a rich history of having the witch beasts that have existed there for hundreds of years reject every existence from stepping foot onto their territory. It contained miasma that could cause travelers to lose their sense of direction and gnaw at their hearts. It contained groups of witch beasts as evil vanguards, indulging themselves in devouring human lives. And then, there was the person who sought world peace, the person at the watchtower who determined each and every one of the successes and failures made by those who came close. That person was the Sage Shaula.
Knowing that alone, it feels like we're lining up for suicide.
Just being reminded of the obstacles that were ahead was enough to cause dejection. In reality, those that journeyed towards this place, while fully knowing what awaited them, were perhaps beings like suicidal people, or perhaps witch cultists. At any rate, it seemed like they were nothing but people with brain abnormalities. However, these people were neither of the above, and possessed no intention to die. It was rather the opposite. They intended to live. They would provide a path of life to each and every one of the people who had lost their way of living. They had begun this expedition in order to obtain this seed of hope.
Nevertheless, it's strange.
While imagining the shaking of the unshakable dragon carriage, Subaru whispered these words to the faces in front of them. Hearing that, every single one of them turned their eyes towards Subaru. A total of 4 glances came his way. Adding in Subaru to the other people in his carriage would make for a final sum of 5 passengers. That was what the situation looked like.
Strange? Did something happen?
No, it's nothing important, Emilia-san. It's just that I feel it's quite unexpected for all of these faces to be sharing the same dragon carriage and getting along so well.
Subaru responded this way as he brushed off Emilia's question. To Subaru's right and left, securing both his sides, were Emilia and Beatrice. These were his allies. It was a given that these two would be with Subaru. The problem was the two in front of them.
Well, it may be normal for you to feel like that. Actually, I thought it was really surprising too. So it'd be natural for Natsuki-kun to feel uncomfortable, huh?
Ah, that is correct.
The person who let out a high-pitched laughter and spoke with a Kansai dialect, or rather, Kararagi dialect, was Anastasia. After a reply in her not Kansai dialect, she gazed towards him with a meaningful look while feeling her hair.
Though, if we're gonna talk exclusively about being uncomfortable, I ain't so sure you can beat Julius-san here.
How harsh. However, please do not worry. I am also a knight at heart. Just a single night is enough for me to adjust my heart. Not to mention that a few days have already passed. I promise to never show a slight similar to shamefulness that I displayed the other day, ever again.
So graceful. I'll be taking you on your word then.
Julius bowed in response to Anastasia's banter-like remark, just as he would have done before. That wasn't surprising. He had indeed been damaged by the authority of gluttony, but to be specific, he had borne effects on everyone around his person rather than on himself. Thus, the people that had changed their behavior had been his friends rather than himself. He could not conceal just how upset he was upon receiving these reactions, but as he himself had just stated, he seemed to have accepted it with ease.
You're outrageous.
Although he couldn't voice it, Subaru felt it was worthy of praise. That strength of spirit, Subaru commended it. It was not as if Subaru was unfamiliar with the feeling he was feeling as well, the feeling of having your own existence being left behind, having nobody around that shared his own memories. Natsuki Subaru, as he was able to go back in time with Turn by Death, definitely possessed recollections of worlds that nobody else remembered. If he were to recall a single experience in which he had built up relationships only to have them lost, Subaru reconsidered the first Roswaal mansion and his repeated days there. He had been summoned to another world, had struggled at the world capital with his objective of helping Emilia, and then as a result, he had been invited to Roswaal's mansion. He then proceeded to experience 4 iterations of events before stepping foot into the 5th world. The memory of the 4 worlds up until then were held within Subaru and nowhere else. Even now, it was difficult to forget the shock he had experienced from being treated as a stranger by the very same people whom he had built relationships with during these days at the mansion. Pain and sadness would never fade away.
What is it, I suppose? Subaru, why have you suddenly started petting Betty's head, in fact?
Don't worry about it. It's just... I'm deeply emotional by the fact you seriously saved me back then. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't understand, I suppose. Also, my hair is getting messed up, so stop. You don't have to stop, but pet it just a little softer, in fact.
Beatrice tilted her head towards Subaru as she sat in the seat only half an ass away, just like she had requested of him. Subaru delivered some pats to her head, not allowing him to forget his state of mind at the time he was truly saved. The only person whose feelings towards Subaru did not change during the loop of days at the mansion was Beatrice. They had met before returned by Death's save point. So, after that, she remained as the only person whose manner of coming into contact with Subaru did not alter. Moreover, the way he had been saved would also stay secret to her for a long, long time.
After that, Emilia Tan saved me, huh?
Emilia made a curious face in response to Subaru's reminiscence. Subaru's right here, right now, because he had been saved by her kindness, voice, attitude, as well as the warmth of the lap that she had lent him. That was why Subaru was able to recognize how impressive it was for Julius had actually accomplished it all on his lonesome. It had taken so much help, and so many times, 4 times worth of time in fact, for Subaru to overcome what Julius had. Or maybe it was because a certain someone was there to lend him a helping hand. A certain someone that was forgotten by Anastasia. A certain someone that did not seek help from anyone in his own camp. A certain someone who had his ties severed with the quasi-spirits whom he'd contracted with. A certain someone that did not recall his blood brother either. If that were the case, then he would be grateful.
You've been staring at people's faces for quite a while now. Is there something wrong, Subaru?
Nothing's wrong. I was just thinking that it's not pleasant to see you smiling with such elegance after someone calls you graceful.
Graceful and with elegance. That pair have a splendid sound. I never expected I would receive praise from you. It is pleasantly surprising. Or no, that may be an exaggeration. Let's see. Typical?
I didn't mean to praise you! And hearing you say that pisses me off!
In the same tone as before, or rather, without being as glib, Subaru changed his approach. The evident frailness on his face back in his brother's hospital room at Pristella had been hard to digest. Subaru had recollections of that time, when a lack of satisfaction was evident in his expression, prompting Subaru to complain. However, all that seemed like completely forgotten history now.
You and Julius get along. Were you like this before you are the way you are now?
Emilia Tan, you've got it wrong. There is no way me and this guy get along well. Did you see my face? I can't see it, but it's the worst it's ever been.
Really? I don't think you're right, but... No, I'm not talking about the way you look. I'm talking about you two getting along so well. Subaru's eyes were the same as ever. They're really scary.
The same as ever? Really scary?
Well, for me, I like Subaru's eyes. I'm being truthfully truthful.
Damn it! How I wish that part about my eyes was cut out from the audio recording.
Emilia let out a wry smile as she filled Subaru with regret. She then turned towards Julius with an inquisitive look, causing him to take a glance towards Subaru.
I myself have no room to deny those words. In reality, to say that he and I are close would not be the most correct statement. Although, in my eyes, we are compromising with each other, despite how things may look.
To put it as compromising, that's already condescending. Humble down there a bit. It's gonna piss me off even more.
What an abrasive point of view. Can you tell him that too?
Julius sought Emilia's agreement on the matter, but she reacted to their exchanges by brushing up her hair and...
Just as I thought, you're really close, right?
Come on, it should already be clear.
Well, I guess you are close then.
There was a slight disagreement with Emilia, but Subaru and Julius acted as if nothing had happened. This made Emilia become more and more baffled. Anastasia tried to restrain herself from laughing, letting out chuckles with a smile. Anastasia's reaction caused Julius to suddenly loosen his lips, as if indicating that he had calmed down. That transient master-servant relationship was hardly strange to Subaru, being someone who's familiar with the other side of it. The Anastasia at hand differed from the genuine Anastasia Hoshin, and was a fake, merely sharing the same exterior. Anastasia's body was currently being used by the artificial spirit Echidna, otherwise known as Aridna. This so-called Aridna had no intentions of taking over her body, but he was unsure of how much he could trust her. Being someone who was aware of the situation, the only thing that Subaru did not fail to do was to prevent those unaware of the situation, like Emilia and Julius, from realizing it.
Subaru, cut it out in fact.
Beatrice called out to Subaru, who was surely in a state of deep thought. This girl's hair was in a messy state as Subaru was petting her head all throughout this period of silence. Her cute face had a sour look.
Oh, my bad, Bayako. Your cute appearance is a mess. Your hair's all botched now.
Perhaps you shouldn't make it sound like Betty's cuteness is ruined just from her hairdo, I suppose. Moreover, your face is starting to look scary, in fact.
Half an ass away from Subaru, Beatrice spoke while frankly fixing her messed up hair with her hands. Subaru let out an "oh," preventing himself from talking, as Beatrice held a face that made it look like she thought him helpless.
There's no point in making such an excessively worrisome face, I suppose. Betty will take care of it, in fact. If something happens, Betty will notice it much faster than Subaru, I suppose.
Yeah.
Beatrice spoke these words in response to Subaru's anxiety. Beatrice, the other person besides Subaru who was aware of Aridna and how she was replacing Anastasia. Originally, Subaru had promised to keep it secret for two reasons. First, to avoid causing any unnecessary commotion about it. Second, because Aridna had claimed to have no intentions to snatch control of Anastasia's body. However, Beatrice would be the only one to realize if something happened, albeit belatedly. They both are the same type of artificial spirit, two being sharing a relationship with the witch Echidna. If it seemed like Aridna was planning something, Beatrice would surely sense it. Although, if he were to consider Beatrice's emotions, he did not feel like it was very advisable for Beatrice to get involved with Echidna, but...
Putting your unnecessary suspicions aside, it's fine that Subaru acted like Subaru and sought help from anybody without caring about who it was. Like you always have, instead of just worrying it alone, in fact. Though you came to Betty first, I suppose. I'll give you my praise this time for that, in fact.
That was her response, so that was that.
I see it.
Just when he thought the dragon carriage had fallen into a state of silence, Emilia suddenly whispered these words. It seemed that Emilia had seen their destination afar as she gazed out the window of the dragon carriage. Subaru also understood that the view of the window was changing into familiar scenery.
What a nostalgic road. We'll arrive at Roswaal's mansion soon, huh?
He murmured these words, first making sure to restrain his feelings from being near their first checkpoint, remembering their original goal. This group's destination, as mentioned before, were the Auguria Sand Dunes, the place where they would seek to consult Sage Shaula. However, they had already managed to stop by Roswaal's mansion on the way, as to prepare for their trip and to make a stop in their long expedition. There were many things that they wanted to talk to the fellow camp members about, including the incident at Pristella and the occasion of getting to speak with the sage. Also, moreover,
It's not just a simple stop.
there was meaning in dropping by Roswaal's mansion before beginning their expedition to meet the sage. When looking at the big picture, its meaning would be meager and small to the world. However, through Natsuki Subaru's small, human eyes, it possessed great potential. Subaru squinted his eyes to envision the Roswaal mansion, so distant that he could not yet be seen. Each of the four people inside the dragon carriage were looking at Subaru. Various emotions were held by the colors of their eyes, but Subaru had no composure to take notice of any of their glances. When the dragon carriage arrived at Roswaal's mansion, more than 1 hour had gone by past noon. The long migration from the city of Pristella, which had taken about 10 days, went on a temporary hold.
Petra! What?
They rode the ground dragons towards Roswaal Mansion, gave their thanks to the coachman, and then got off the carriage. A petite maid rushed towards Subaru from the mansion and jumped at him with unrestrained force. She came into his chest with might and force, and Subaru somehow managed to catch her while backing up. He then petted the head of the girl who had flown into his arms.
Petra, if you do that so suddenly, you'll startle me, you know. I've been gone for nearly a month now. How have you been?
I've been fine, as you can tell. However, Subaru, Sama, has been having it rough, right? I've been worried ever since that letter came in 2 days ago. You were injured so much again, right? Can you handle the pain?
Embarrassing! Embarrassing!
Petra touched Subaru's body to confirm his pain as her reddish-brown colored hair swung back and forth. As Subaru reacted to this with a wry smile while the others got off the dragon carriage.
Hey, Petra, do your job as a maid of the mansion properly. If you don't, Ram and Frederica will get mad at you.
Right. Tell me about what happened later.
They had only just returned, and Petra's credibility has already been undermined. Petra's worry would be inevitable if he told her about how he got involved in what seemed to have been a city-wide uproar to try and obtain the crystal. It wasn't as though Subaru had intended to get into trouble with the witch's cult, but that excuse would be meaningless. It was true that most of the witch cult's purposes were related to Emilia's camp.
Welcome, guests. Compliments to your effort to make this long trip. I am Petra Leyte, a maid of this residence. I will be your guide towards the mansion.
Subaru's recollections were put aside, and then Petra let out a vocal message coupled with a dignified gesture. Julius took Anastasia's hand to help her descend the carriage, and they both had looks of admiration on their faces. Also visible were somewhat prideful looks on Emilia's and Beatrice's faces.
You're quite the well-behaved child, even though you're little, huh? You're being thorough with your training.
She certainly seems almost like a different person compared to when she jumped at Subaru.
How embarrassing.
Julius agreed with a smiling Anastasia, and then Petra's face grew redder and redder from the remarks. Julius looked down at her, then proceeded to look at Subaru, and...
I see. I understand the reason why you are given the moniker of Lowlymancer.
I will have you know, Petra isn't as small as a little girl, and even if you call me that, the only lolly I will mance is Bearco. Get your facts straight.
Betty also isn't a girl that works hard to be used by Subaru at his convenience, I suppose. Subaru, you should get your facts straight as well, in fact.
Subaru replied to Julius' banter in a cold way, and then Beatrice rebuked Subaru in an even more glacial manner. Subaru fell silent, his mouth turned into a frown, and Beatrice let out a sigh. She then looked at Petra's lower area. She stood beside her, and then made a slight movement to grab onto the edge of the skirt of the other's maid outfit.
Also, look, not much has changed throughout Betty and Petra's time, I suppose. Wait a second. Betty feels like Petra has grown a bit, in fact. Her hair has grown a bit too, I suppose.
It's because 1 month has passed. And it's also my growth period right now. I will grow, and my hair will grow too, if I don't cut it. Beatrice-chan will stay small, though.
What in tarnation, in fact?
Petra smiled as she hugged and astonished Beatrice tightly, continuing to embrace the pouty-faced Beatrice for a sufficient amount of time. She then walked away, saying,
Well then, allow me to guide you all.
All right, we'll finally be going to the...
He sought to follow her, but then someone's hand grabbed onto the back of his collar. Upon raising a choked voice, he looked back, only to be surprised by the fact that Emilia was the one who'd reached out to his scruff. Emilia jerked Subaru's chin while holding onto the back of his neck, and directed him towards the carriage behind him.
Subaru, Patrash doesn't seem to be happy.
Tis has become a selfish affair, huh?
If one were to throw their gaze towards the ground dragons as per Emilia's point, out of the two that they traveled with, it would be noticeable that the beautiful, jet-black ground dragon was glaring at Subaru with frightfully piercing eyes. She was Subaru's beloved dragon, Patrash. When Subaru tried to return her look, she turned away bluntly, then letting out a light but very displeased sound.
You seriously weren't able to make up with her? Even though you had 10 days, huh?
Yeah, I know. But I really don't think it's my fault this time.
Subaru scratched his head as he thought of what to do with Petra, who was leaning onto his belly. Ever since they left the city of Pristella, Petra had been giving Subaru the cold shoulder, a bit before that actually. When he had gone to the Ground Dragon stable to pick her up, once the defensive battle against the witch cult was done and dusted, she was already in a bad mood. He didn't talk to Petra, as Otto was out of commission because of injuries. However, he had a long-standing relationship with Petra. It was about time that Subaru found out what his beloved dragon was so angry about.
Oh, that's well. I know I neglected her during the uproar, and that I even made her feel lonely. But.
Subaru?
Subaru was on the very end of his statement when Petra lashed out her tail at him, dealing a direct hit and causing him to end up in the dirt. As expected, Petra had no mercy in her aggressive response. If he were to reply to her in a deceitful way, she would come to strike him without hesitation.
I would never expected it. To think that I was able to avoid Regulus's attacks before, but can't avoid this. It's just...
Are you alright? Patrash decided to suddenly wave her tail again. Doesn't this mean that you'll get hit once more if you don't say the right thing?
Emilia made the terrifying point as she went on one knee to lend him a hand. He looked at Petra, and she certainly was there shaking her long tail. She sliced through the air with the end of her tail as if to threaten Subaru. It felt like she was saying that she'd double the power for each mistake he'd make. He unconsciously lost the ability to speak properly, and his throat became cramped, realizing he couldn't afford to reply carelessly.
Even if you're careless like that, your ground dragon has an overwhelming amount of sympathy towards you.
However, that statement made by Julius, who was disheartened by the guide's lack of success, would cause the undesirable effect that she would come at Subaru. Subaru pointed at himself and Petra in response to Julius's argument, and...
Really? I'm kinda covered in all this dirt, you know? You call this sympathy?
Can you not even feel the proof of deep affection with your own eyes? She is a kind-hearted ground dragon. She is mostly aggravated that she was unable to help you during that turmoil, and she is angry at you for not seeking her help. So it might just be indignance rather than anger towards you.
What are you saying? Just how high are you gonna make her heroin power? Stop it!
The level of correctness of Julius's points was unknown, but at the very least, his words made Petra's tail swing come to an end. Subaru looked at Petra once again, and she turned away just like always, but...
Looking at her now, it seems like she's somewhat embarrassed after hearing that.
Emilia-tan, you noticed that too? I noticed too. It makes my heart flutter. So don't do that too often, please, Petra.
He said these words, reached out nervously with his hand, and then Petra finally lowered her head, allowing Subaru to touch her body covered with tough scales. And with this, it seemed like the Cold War, where he had 10 days to make amends, ended on a good note.
Isn't that enough? Is everything fine now?
Petra was letting her impatience show through her shouts, as they continued to remain at the mansion's front gate without paying attention to the time. She had come out here having been instructed to guide them, and yet they were still taking so much time.
If we don't return soon, Ram Nesuma will get mad again and...
If you can worry about such things, that means you were just a little bit short on your efforts.
Yeah!
Petra, who had been making light sounds with her footsteps, let out a shriek and then strained her back due to that voice. Upon turning back, she saw a pink-haired maid far away, coming from the direction of the mansion. It was Ram. No mistakes nor doubt about it. Ram slowly turned her gaze towards Subaru's group, and the guest after Petra went as still as a stone statue because of her glare, and...
I thought that Petra had gotten better at her tasks, and just as she was about to be recognized for it, this happened. Ram is very disappointed.
Sorry, Ram Nesuma. You were about to recognize me for my work?
Yes, your cooking is better than Ram's, your cleaning is more sensible than Ram's. You're better at doing laundry than Ram, and you wake up earlier than Ram, so I was close to recognizing you.
You should have more self-doubt when you point these things out.
Just how bad was the veteran maid in comparison with this girl's who had 1 year of experience as a maid under her belt? Even if one were to take into account Petra's ability to learn quickly, the hurdle was so low that it wasn't even worth mentioning. In response to his shout, Rom snorted her nose with a ha in a way that Subaru was completely familiar with, and
How does one proceed to have doubt about oneself? Rom only holds expectations and self-confidence for herself.
I always felt like that part about you is the only thing that deserves respect.
Subaru thus responded to Ram's majestic declaration while being astounded. In reality, there was reason to emulate Ram's optimism, or rather, there's reason in emulating her fortitude. He just wished that she would have a bit more self-reflection, but
If you did that, I think it wouldn't really feel like you'd be the real Ram, huh?
That is a scary thought. Moreover, I do not think it would be ideal to leave guests out here for so long. Let us hurry up and enter the mansion.
Subaru agreed with Ram's dismissive words. They had taken too much time outside the mansion. It wouldn't be surprising for Fred Erica to even Roswaal to show up eventually if they wasted any more time. The royal candidates and the Margrave were all to gather here to talk about what they would be doing.
Is Roswaal at the mansion proper right now?
Ram, who had begun walking to guide the others, tapped Petra's shoulder to relieve her stiffness. At Emilia's call from behind, Ram replied with a yes, without taking a look back.
Fortunately, he was sojourning at this residence when the letter arrived, so he has remained here. There was a summary in the letter about the Pristella affair. There should be details to discuss.
Yeah, there should be, considering a lot of things did happen.
The number of people here now in comparison to when you first left has changed, huh? Did Garth and Otto die?
Like hell I'd let them die! They aren't dead! They're just coming back home later because of their injuries!
Just as Subaru was about to breach the topic of the letter, his charge was countered. Ram let out a shrug with an indifferent manner in response.
I am all too familiar with the depths of men who lack composure. Barasu, especially, is one that has an open hole from which the contents of its depths are being poured out, so you should be careful. To have people become aware of your depths and then finding out you are empty inside is the worst.
Oh, that really hurts, so cut it out! Also, more importantly,
A letter had been sent to the mansion prior to Subaru and the others' departure. If the contents of the letter had been shared, then it should be clear the return was not just a return. Therefore, when Subaru attempted to confirm the contents of the second half of the letter, and upon choosing the words he would say, Ram readily raised her finger.
I told you, didn't I? Rest assured, Roswaal-sama is at this mansion. Also, preparations have been made for both the Sleeping Beauty and the confinement room. Although,
Ram cut off her words towards Subaru at the end and then gently licked her lips. She wet her lips with the red tip of her tongue, with a gesture that had a sense of gracefulness embellished somewhere in it, and then said,
although neither of them were Rom's doings. It was Frederica and Petra's job.
why did you make such a prideful face there?
In any case, even after a whole month had passed since they had just last met, well, that was just the way she was.